Well, welcome again. Money D&A Podcast, where we talk all kinds of things money. It's two schmucks, Andy and Dale, if I can
Ah,
borrow the term, just getting together and chatting to you about all things about money. And we wanted to come at you because we just feel like not enough people are freely talking about money these days. So
exactly.
why not start with where we're right away at? Today, we are getting into budgeting. Do you need a budget? Why do you need a budget? Where do you even start? Um, Budgeting can be super important, but I want to ask you, Andy, why do you think we need a budget?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think my thought process is the purpose and the importance of a budget is is kind of foundational, right? Last week we did our introductory episode, say, hey, this is kind of what we're hoping to do, hoping to, instill some hope in everybody's lives out there that, there is a way to kind of take control of your finances and not live, paycheck to paycheck and give some hope. So piggybacking off of that idea, to be able to do that, I feel like you kind of need to know where you're at with your money, right? Am I overspending? Am I how much of this check that I have coming in needs to go to debt, needs to go to this. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. There's some expenses that maybe are not every month, but if we're thoughtful and mindful of that, we can have that where it doesn't actually catch us off guard. So I think the reason that you want a budget, why would you want a budget, is so you can kind of plan ahead and that you can be smart with your money. That would be my short answer as to why I feel like we can budget. What are again, and we got plenty of time on this one question, so I'm sure we'll go back and forth. But what would you? I'll turn this back to you, Dale. Why do you think it's important to budget?
I think you hit it right on. You said um you want to be able to plan. I think you want to have a handle on or control over your finances. If you don't want to be controlled by your money, if you don't want to be controlled, like if you don't want money to control you, then you need to be able to control your money. And what better way? What the only way really is to start with what where you're at. It's like
Mhm.
if you're taking a journey, a long journey ahead, and you want to be able to plan for this journey, plan for this trip. You're not just going to go in and haphazardly just start walking out into the desert and saying, "Yeah, I'm going to make it through," and somehow find Las Vegas somewhere magically. Wherever I'm at, I'm going to be at Las Vegas tomorrow. I'm just going to start walking through. It'll be a little bit chaotic at best. You'll be
Right,
setting yourself for some massive disappointment, and maybe you'll be super thirsty and hot if you're not
right.
really prepared. But if we were to sit there and just take stock, take a set of like, well, where am I at right now? Where am I starting
Mhm.
with? What do I need? What might I need along the way? Having some degree of an audit and a frame of reference to start a frame of what is the word I'm looking for? um, a reference point. That's what it
Yeah.
is. You
Hmm.
need some kind of a reference point um, to be able to tackle this journey, and I think that's what the budget is for us. So you're
Right.
writing down on paper where are you at? What is your story?
Right. So, when do you think is a good place to start? I realize that's not one of our main three questions here, but my reason for asking is that my parents were very smart with their money. They were accountants. They knew their stuff backwards and forwards. I don't remember really setting up a budget when I was a kid. I remember, I they did teach me how to balance a checkbook, so kudos to them for that. But as far as like an actual budget, I don't remember really doing that really until I was graduated after high school or after college rather. um, I took that as kind of a challenge of like, okay, how can I do this a little bit differently with my family? I actually started my kids quite young on budgeting. What are your thoughts? When's a good time to start thinking about money with kiddos if you're as a parent?
Really, I don't know if there is too young of an age. If
Hmm.
if they start to get money and understanding that we exchange things of value with other people
Right.
to get things of value, and we can give things of value. I think we give we are we have no problems introducing the idea of gift giving to kids for birthdays
Yeah, right.
or receiving gifts in that regard. And um, it's maybe one or two more steps away of maturity that it's required to start getting a grapple on money. So I don't know
Right.
if I could say there's too young of an age. How early
Hmm.
did you start your kids on this envelopes that you talked about?
I'm thinking about it, and I was mad that I couldn't find it because I was pretty proud of myself. We did it up. We made it super, kind of cute and fun. They were probably, I know they were in elementary school. They weren't even in middle school yet. But we literally had like physical envelopes, and we had little emblems on each one of them. So I mean, I'm gonna do a terrible job here. So we're gonna have our little envelope right here, and then this one was like maybe this was the church, right? So there's their ties, and I had on either side of it, here's 10% of this one. And then they knew that when I handed them we made it super simple out of the gate, right? They got $10 a month. Maybe it was, I think it wasn't even a week. So it's $10 a month. They would take one of their dollars, put it in their tithes envelope. And then they knew, every couple of weeks they would take that out, put those $3 or $4 in their pocket, and put that uh, in the giving plate at that point. So that was kind of where we started. And I agree with you. I think it was when we started entrusting is probably maybe not the right way to say it, but when we wanted to start introducing the idea of money to them, that's when I wanted to kind of just capitalize on that and say, let's get you smart on this so you don't have to kind of maybe go through some of the heartaches that I had to learn the hard way, and just kind of start establishing habits. Which reminds me, tell me about the relationship between budgeting and habits. What do you think? Is there any correlation there?
Budgeting and habits. Yeah. I mean, the more you get into the habit of it, the easier the budgeting will be. Maybe it's an ease.
Hmm.
Um, I'm curious to know what your correlation is, why you bring up habits specifically. Yeah.
I think just probably because, thinking of it as a parent, if I can establish early on that, when you have money coming in, that you are thoughtful as to how you apply that, and again, in our cases, 10% is always going to tie. That's kind of that you only spend 90%, right? You only really get to allocate 90% of what it is that you're bringing in. And then from that point, is it 20% that we're savings? And again, it's easier when they're kids because they literally have no expenses at this point. So we can kind of establish, back to your question about habits. If you can establish the habit of not living on 120% of what you're making, and you can live on 70%, 60%, then when they actually have real big boy money, they're not used to overspending and just, living off of a credit card. I think that's my correlation as to why I was talking about habits.
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember reading a book. It's called Profit First
Okay.
by Mike. I'm going to butcher his last name. I think it's McCallowitz. Don't ask me to
Okay.
spell it right now. It's something very maybe Polish or Eastern European or something. Sorry, Mike. I'm really sorry if you're hearing this. Um, but he's speaking to specifically to business owners and he has very much like a similar kind of envelope system that you have, although in his
Hmm.
case, he designates specific bank accounts, right? Like actual
Oh
separate
yeah.
accounts
Oh yeah, yeah.
where you have an operating account, and that's sort of like your big envelope where all the money is coming
Hmm.
in and out. And then you have your profit account,
Hmm.
and you put
Hmm.
money into the profit account right away. You have your taxes account, and you make sure you don't, put yourself in a position where you're spending money that isn't yours. If those taxes need to go out, then you put away money into the tax account right away, and then you have your reinvestments. Anyways, all these different accounts. I'm not going to get into the details of it.
Hmm.
um, and right away I think there was wisdom in being able to uh, immediately assign where you want that money to go as soon as it comes into the account. You're not squandering any money that you don't have. You're not overextending yourself on credit or something like that. Or if you are, you know that you are knowingly borrowing money from somewhere else, and you have a plan to be able to pay that back.
Hmm.
But I found that there was a lot of wisdom in that, and if at all possible, in the profit first example, automating all of that so
Hmm.
that you eliminate the friction of that habit happening, right? Of that habit formation as a business owner. it would be great if we could do that for our kids and right away tell them. I mean, sure, if they're in the physical habit of moving money from one envelope to the other,
Right.
and that's probably easier. But if
Sure.
we could just tell them right off the top, hey, you're gonna have $100, but we're gonna automatically
Mhm.
assign 10 of those $100 into
Right.
one account, and you're going to save another $5 for your future self later on and give that
Yep.
to somebody. And if you want to save up for a present for something, then you got
Hmm.
to put aside money for that. I think that's brilliant if we can somehow teach that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I know we're about ready to wrap to the next question here, but that idea of automating, I don't think that can be understated as to how important and how much easier that makes your life. If you can automate things, I know what my check is going to be every month, so I've got an automated 10% of that that's going direct bank to bank right to the church. So the 10% is done, it's taken care of, but it's not something that I have to remember to take my checkbook for that. So automation is key.
Yeah, I mean, um, we can touch back on this maybe a little bit after because I think it kind of ties into our next question. But yeah, let's revisit that. I think you're
Okay.
you're absolutely right. Automation has a really sort of a bad rap right now
Mm,
because there's so much AI talk
right.
and it's almost contentious.
Hmm.
But especially when it comes to habits and
Right.
automating those habits as much as possible, getting into the unconscious or subconscious parts of our brain or
Right.
parts of the electronic world. Absolutely, it's powerful.
Yep. So let me ask you this one. We'll turn the tables over to you. So Doug Dale, sorry. Doug's another friend of mine. I'm not sure where my mind went right there. Dale.
He's a
Oh,
fantastic guy, I bet.
he is a good guy. Not as cool as you, but he's a good guy. Dale, how would you get started, right? We've got, thousands of listeners, right? Hopefully, eventually, that are looking at this and be like, that's great and all, but how do I start doing this? What's the best way to do this? I know that you and I are going to maybe have, similar lines of thinking, but maybe some different ideas. So what would be some recommendations of you for folks that are like, okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. How do I get started?
It's a great question. I guess we can break down the starting points with um sort of a decision and then an
Mm,
action,
okay,
right?
there we go.
The first thing to start is making a commitment, is
Hmm.
making a decision to say this is worth doing. And hopefully we've sort of convinced people enough if they were on the fence about it before. I mean, just do it. Just get on it before, but commit
Right.
to doing it. And realize that commitment, that decision will take time and energy. So you're
Mhm.
not just committing to the importance of having a budget, and really you're committing not just to the budgeting part, but you're committing to getting a grapple on your financial life, on your
Right.
financial story, right? And beneath that commitment is sort of this belief, even if you don't have the belief
Mm-hmm.
yet,
Right.
that you can rewrite your financial story. Borrow somebody else's belief. You can borrow our belief and say, I
Right.
believe in you. You can rewrite your financial story. I've seen it happen enough in my own life, in other people's lives. I've heard so many hundreds of stories about people changing the trajectory of their financial lives to know that it is possible. So know that it's possible for you. And if you don't yet believe it, that it's possible for you, then use this time to test if
Hmm.
it's possible for you, right? Kind of
Right.
like treat it as an experiment. If I spend the
Hmm.
next 3, 6 months, even a year from now, just committing to some kind of actions that could possibly change the
Hmm.
trajectory of the story, my financial story, your financial story, would it be worth it? Would it be
Right.
worth testing this experiment, right?
Hmm.
Um, and once you decide to do that experiment, once you decide to take that step forward, then you're committing to it, and you're committing to it on a regular basis.
Hmm.
I would suggest doing it at least once a week, maybe
Hmm.
at the very minimum once a month.
Right.
Doing it every day might be overkill for some, but it might be easier for some people. That's okay. But as long as you commit to regularly setting aside that time and energy, kind of like a date with yourself and your money, right? It's like taking your mom out for lunch. taking your kids out for ice cream
Hmm.
every regularly or something,
Right.
um, going to a visit with a doctor, making a regular time for yourself and saying, this is
Hmm.
important to me. And knowing that time is, well, anyway, making a commitment. I think that's
Yep.
going to be the first level of decision. And then there's the action points. Like, where do you start in terms of an action, right? I remember when I started with an action, I when I was a kid, I think I was like 10 or 11 years old or something. My parents gave me an allowance, and it was
Mhm.
probably, I'm dating myself. It was probably a quarter a week. I probably got 25 cents every week. And they told me to write down wherever I got money in, I would write it down on a piece of paper. And whenever I would spend money somewhere, I would write that down on that same piece of paper. And it was really easy.
Mhm.
It may not have been a quarter, it might have been a dollar or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
But it was literally just tracking whatever was coming in
Hmm.
and tracking whatever was coming out.
Yep.
And it can be that simple, really. I talk about sometimes doing what I call an in and out journal, right? And it's
Hmm.
it's literally for like 3 months tracking everything that we consume, that I consume
Mm.
through the
Okay.
course of a day, through my eyes, ears, nose, mouth, through my pores, all the energy and the music and the influences that I have. I'm trying to write down as much as I can that's coming into my system. And then on the other side of the page, it's a two-page journal, right? So one side is everything that's coming in, and the
Okay.
other side, I'm actually tracking down whatever is coming out, whatever I'm experiencing, all
Mm.
the thoughts, if it's like
Hmm.
recurring thoughts, recurring dreams, how well I'm sleeping and exercising, and all this. Anyway, I'm saying this because the budget is in some sense at the core of it is starting with a snapshot of everything that's coming in and everything that's coming out, right?
Right.
And doing that, committing to do that for not just like 1 or 2 days or even 1 or 2 weeks, committing to it for at least a couple of months,
Right.
because then you can start to see and realize how our money habits and our money stories actually are just an extension of our larger stories, right? The
Hmm.
things that are happening around us, what our jobs are, or what jobs we have or don't have, what are the beliefs that we have about money, what are the stories that we have about money, what are the things that we value, right? I'm
Hmm.
really saving up for this, the latest and greatest iPhone or whatever
Right.
Apple is going to be spitting out at me next.
Hmm.
Well, then that journal, that budget becomes um a a page out of the larger book of the values of my
Sure.
life, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, you don't have to go so deep and philosophical into this whole thing, but
Hmm.
with budgeting, first of all, I think it's really just getting a sense of tracking
Right.
the income and the expenses. Yeah.
So, I would say, yeah, back to that, just kind of the practical steps, like how do I start, right? And what the last question, for what it's worth, is how can we make this easier? So let's just give some examples of how you can start, and then we'll show some ways back to that kind of automation idea of, okay, that's great, now I'm started, but how can I make this easier and make that a little bit more seamless? But we were talking just before we started here that really we can do everything from kind of the low tech aspect where you just have like a literally just a ledger, like a book that you're, and I mean, this is really what it's going to be. It's going to be date. It's going to be, the name of who it is that what it was, the so it'd be like credit. Now let's do a little bit more, is it a credit? Is it a debit? And then there's the total. Sorry, I ran out of room. Okay. I mean, that's your spreadsheet. That's what it is. And I mean, if you're doing this with paper, it's pretty simple to just kind of do this. You have to kind of do the math. Are we adding this one or are we subtracting it? If you go the little bit of a techie route, you can put this into a spreadsheet just for what it's worth. If you go into Google Docs, you can create, there's a template already created for you, and you just do a new Google Sheet, and there's an option to create a brand new, ready to go budget that you can start using that already has the thing that says equal this minus that. It has all of that All you have to do is start plugging the numbers in right there. Okay. So we've got super low tech. We've got kind of middle of the road, which would require probably a computer maybe. And then there are some systems as well, which we're going to talk about, that actually make this that much easier here. So I think both you and I, Dale, are fans of a little company called YNAB. Is that a true
Mhm.
statement?
It's true for me. Yes.
Okay, so I'm the geeky guy. So the reason why this is episode number 2 and we're already talking about YNAB is I'm the guy that has a swag from a budgeting app. Like I'm that weird guy that has a hat for a budgeting app. So forgive me, but this is just something that I geek out about that. So
You don't have to be it's not about forgiveness, man. There's
we're
geek and then
amongst
there's
friends,
super
right?
geek and yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, man. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the last
Why do you
question here
love
is like, yeah, how can we make it easier? So Dale, what do you think? What are some ways that we can, we like the concept, but how can I make this where it's not something that I'm having to painstakingly do every single aspect of this? What do you think?
I think whatever tools, going back to one of the points that we made before, um, doing whatever we can to be able to minimize the friction,
Hmm.
um, whether that's using some kind of automation, whether that's using a tool like YNAB or any other app, budgeting app that might be out there, or Google Docs, spreadsheets. Um, so in some cases, it's like you want to be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody, maybe a coach, a financial coach, a planner, or something. But whatever it takes to minimize that friction that is in the way of forming that habit of budgeting, of being intimately acquainted with your finances, then go for it. It's totally going to be
Hmm.
worth it, right?
Right.
Whatever
Right.
you can afford, really, in terms of your budget for those tools, then I would say go for it. But I think whatever you need to do in terms of the time, whatever you need to do in terms of the tools, right? You need to commit to the time. You need to commit to a tool, then go for the tool,
Hmm.
and you need to commit to the action. If
Right.
there's something revealed out of this budgeting exercise,
Hmm.
and you want to make changes, then you
Yep.
need to commit to making some of those changes. That's going to be
Exactly right.
another level of something. But let's
Right.
not go there yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
no. Well, it's a deeper conversation for another episode, I think.
that's for the next time. Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it. I love it.
Um, Yeah, I mean, I love YNAB. I was introduced to a couple of years ago by another financial coach. She was actually a budgeting coach, and I didn't even know that was a thing. But she introduced me to YNAB, and I love how it works and how it does a lot of the calculations on the fly for me. What do you love about YNAB? Well, I mean, what is YNAB, first of all? Before for any we were talking about this. What is this?
So it
This
stands for you need a budget. Pretty on the nose there. They didn't go for the ironic there. They just shrunk that down and did you need a budget is YNAB. There is a book for what Jesse Meacham is the creator of YNAB. He wrote a book that has a lot of these ideas and concepts of budgeting, why we budget, some different rules, which I'm going to just briefly go through the 4 key concepts that YNAB says are the core principles of budgeting. There's other ones. Obviously, we spent the first 25 minutes talking about other ways that do this, but we'll just give you the idea of YNAB. So the reason that I love YNAB is that it connects with, does not move. I'll clarify here. It is not moving your money around for you, but it does connect with your banks and your credit cards that says, okay, I see that Andy spent, $30 at the gas station. It will automatically pull that into YNAB and it kind of knows that, hey, when I go to Maverick, that's going to be gas and it kind of already reduces that amount from that envelope. It's all the way back to the envelope system. It's just in a digital world and it's automated for me. So I can do my budget very, very quickly because I have it dialed in, ready to go, and it's pulling in those debits and credits, and it kind of already knows because I've been using this a while of where it should categorize those. And then to Dale's point, now I have vision into, okay, how have I been spending my money? Where do we need to, do we need to draw back a little bit on going out? Or do we need to plan ahead a little bit on what's going on for like a vacation or something like that? I absolutely love it. And it has saved me so much time and has given me so much more vision and um, insight into how I'm spending my money and how to be wise with it. So I'm a big, big believer in it.
Yeah. We should probably say, I don't know if this is anybody's gonna hound us about this, but we're not sponsored by YNAB or anything. Like we have no relationship other than being YNAB users.
Right.
We have no relationship whatsoever in terms of the software or the company. We're just both big fans. What
Right.
are the principles that you talked about? Four different principles that YNAB is based on.
All right. So we have four core rules that YNAB has. There it is up there. It's kind of hard to see YNAB. So the core rules, and I'll go through each one of them. So number one is give every dollar a job. And these are kind of the fun things again, because I was such a big fan of it. These are the concepts that I kind of used to teach my boys of money, right? Xander, you're working at the ice cream shop, you get a $200 check-in. All right, first thing you do is you give every dollar a job. That money comes in, $20 goes to tithes. How do you want to allocate the rest of that? Again, it's the same idea as envelopes. It's just now in a digital spot. So we're going to give every dollar a job. Let's actually go through these because it'll be more. So we assign each dollar a job, a purpose into a category, whether it's bills, savings, or fund money, to make sure that no money is left unassigned. When we have money just kind of sitting there unassigned, it's not doing anybody any good. And I think Dale had made a comment when we were kind of getting the setup is that it's very important that every dollar has a specific purpose. We are paying to this person, we are saving up for this thing, or we are planning ahead for that. So that's the first concept. Any comments on that? I know we're kind of dialing down on time here. Any comments on that, Dale?
No,
Okay.
no, that's no. Go ahead.
All right. So, core concept, core rule number two is embrace your true expenses. This is the one, and I kind of laughed, and I'm not sure my sister will ever watch this, but I kind of giggled because we were over at my mom's, and she was bemoaning like, "Oh my gosh, I've got the tires. We weren't expecting this tire expense, and we're having to drop $1,000, which is expensive, and I get that." My budgeting mind is like, did you know that your tires were going to wear out at some point? Okay, maybe we start saving. I don't know. No shade against my sister. I love her, but there are things that are going to come up, whether that's tires, annual expenses, subscriptions. Maybe you pay your insurance once a year. Whatever the case is, find out what those are, and YNAB does a great job of tracking that. Of say, I know that I need $120 for my Amazon Prime every November. Let's set aside $11, $12 every month. So when November comes, I just pay it and it's ready to go. So embracing your true expenses gives you some insight looking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Number three, roll with the punches. I like this because sometimes we get so rigid in, hey, I put this money in this account and it's got to do that. Things happen, right? If the water heater goes out, I'm going to have to start pulling money from different places. I roll with the punches to address the specific needs that I need to take care of at that point. That's life. It's all good. Don't get bent around the axle. Just roll with the punches. And the last one is just age your money. So this idea is that if you have bills stacking up, and then as soon as you get your check, you have to pay off those bills, and then you're broke again. We all understand that that's not the best way to live. That's not the most comforting way to live financially, right? So if you have money that's coming in that you're not actually spending for another month, 2 months, 3 months down the road, that means your money is getting older. And that just means you can roll with the punches and you have a little bit of a buffer that makes those times a little bit less scary when they happen. So those are the four core rules of YNAB. Again, not not sponsored by this, but check it out. We'll actually put a link because you can actually get a free month if you do that. So if you are interested, you can check that out. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Well, how do we do? Look at that. Look at the time there.
Time is right
Dale,
on. Yeah.
just like
I
that.
I just have to say, Annie, like while we're wrapping this up, you know, what what strikes me in terms of like those four principles, like they're not just principles for specifically using the app, but there are
No,
rules for all of money and the way we engage with money.
absolutely.
I think the two that really stand out for me right now today, the number three, roll with the punches.
Mhm.
It's about being flexible, and it's about also sometimes not really judging ourselves too harshly
Yes,
if we
absolutely.
impulse splurged on a handbag
Mhm.
or a guitar. Like it's like, okay, well, these are they're indications for us that
Mhm.
these things were important to us,
Right,
and maybe in some cases where we know that wasn't the best purchase, then they might have a return policy or something so that you can
sure,
go back on that.
right.
But also, that first one of like giving every dollar a job. That not You're not sitting on any money. Some people, at least I used to have this idea of savings as like as soon as I get money in, then I need to save $20 of my $100. That $20 is going to be savings, and it's literally just going to sit under a mattress, old school styles.
Hmm.
And money sitting anywhere around doesn't really have a job. It's not really doing anything for us.
No.
And really, really speaking, if we were to get into the psychology of money, or some of the deeper insights of money, maybe for another episode,
Mhm. Right.
um, whatever money we have is always being given or spent, given to someone or spent on something, right?
Right.
Like even if it's just sitting there,
Right.
then it is being spent on waste. It's being
Right.
spent on insulating my mattress in the
Right.
case of
Right.
putting it under the mattress.
Right.
Anyway,
And again, we're going to have a lot more conversations down the road with this, but this idea of giving every dollar a job, this is actually a fairly new concept to me. Is the idea that the idea of savings, again, we're going to get into it. This is a whole nother thing. So here's your little your little taste test for things to come here. The idea of savings is an absolute joke. If you're putting your money in a savings account where it's earning nothing back, you are losing money because inflation is going so fast that money sitting there and doing nothing is actually degrading over time. We have ways to help you fix that and have some thoughts on that, but we'll have to cover that in another episode.
yeah, that maybe that should be the next one, because I think you're right on about that, Andy. Like saving is really just another way of investments and savings. They're kind of the same term if you really break it down. You're giving it to somebody, you're giving it to your future self if you're investing the
Mhm.
money for yourself. You
Sure.
could be investing the money for somebody else. But realize that sometimes the things that are labeled savings vehicles or savings accounts, they're
Hmm.
not really saving too much for us, and they are just giving money to other people.
Right.
The next thing we should touch on somewhere is, because of compound interest and inflation
Mhm.
and some of these other mechanisms that are in place,
Right.
um, dollars can be put to work to make money. Like
Absolutely.
they can grow. Dollars can be put to work
Yep.
in some ways, and that's a big concept. I think that's important to
Right.
to
Yeah.
consider.
So maybe we rephrase the idea of giving every dollar a job. If your dollar is to sit there and be available for, rolling with the punches at this point, don't just leave it in your checking account where it's not doing anything for you. Give that dollar a job where it's in a high yield savings account or something like that, where it's actually earning and it's actually working for you rather than just sitting there and banks are leveraging that to make money for themselves. But I digress. We can talk about that another time. So,
Yeah, that'll be for the next one. I think for the purposes of the budgeting, though,
hmm.
um, if it is in a particular account, just tracking where it is, right? Like when you
Hmm.
get into the more detailed budgeting,
Yep.
we will be listing out all of our different accounts and different places where our money might be coming in and out.
Right.
Well, at least you are tracking where that is. And
Hmm.
if you're just starting with the budgeting, then just recognizing where that is and where it could be doing a better job, making
Sure.
more money for you or for somebody, where it's doing a fantastic job making money for somebody else.
Right.
And
Yep.
once you have a clear picture with a budget in front of you, then you're able to sit there and say, well, I see that I've been making, $3 a month on this $100, and the bank
Hmm.
has been, or the credit card company has been making, God bless them, the credit card company has been making $20 a month on
Yep.
that $100.
Exactly.
Maybe is there a way that we can flip that narrative a little bit? And
Yep.
but
Absolutely.
again, yeah,
Yep.
Andy,
So
it's always it goes by super fast. Like
it
I don't
does,
know.
doesn't it? It does.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Appreciate your time, buddy. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will be back next week with an awesome new subject. Take care. See you guys.
Thank you. Take care.